Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. If you are here live on LinkedIn or live on Instagram, just drop me a comment and say that you're here. So I'm really excited to talk to you about. Oh, I'm just going live on Instagram. Okay, great. Excited to talk to you guys about coaching versus therapy today, a topic that I'm really passionate about. I see both a coach and a therapist. I'm also from LA. So, in LA, I feel like when you're 16, you get a therapist or a nose job or something like that. And it's just really part of the culture. So I'm definitely from a pro therapy family. And obviously, I am a life coach. So I think that I've got a lot to say on this topic. And yeah, I also want to talk about when is appropriate to see a coach, when is appropriate to see a therapist, and kind of the results that you'll get from each one, as well as looking at one on one coaching and group coaching. And then also one of my favorite methods, which is internal family systems therapy. And I coach with internal family systems therapy, and I also see an IFS therapist. So, first of all, I just wanted to start with talking about, the two clients that I typically work with. So, and I want to start here because you might be in one of these camps and then be thinking, okay, maybe I'm thinking about seeing a coach or maybe I'm thinking about seeing a therapist. So, typically the first type of client, I call it my eat, pray, love client. And really these clients come to me when they're almost having a dark night of the soul. And I'd say it's eat, pray, love, when Julia Roberts is on the bath mat at 2 a.m., not when she's with Javier Bardem, like drinking elixirs out of coconuts. So it's a Julia Roberts, she's on the bath mat at 2 a.m. She's in a relationship with her husband and she just thinks, oh my God, how did I get here? And typically people come to me when they're kind of having these moments and they often say, like, I really value health. I really value creativity. I really value freedom, but my life and my current career doesn't really match that. Usually, they want to work more in service based positions. They want to like really work in soul nourishing careers that help people. So that could be coaching, that could be meditation, being a meditation teacher, potentially even a writer. And so they'll come to me and they'll say, I'm not feeling like fully aligned with my life. I'm not really feeling fully aligned with my career. I know that something needs to change. Usually these people have some sort of toxic relationship history background, their relationship history. Sometimes they've got a lot of people pleasing tendencies, or maybe they haven't been dating for a while and can be kind of more avoidant. And so, and they also typically have, problems with boundaries. And so then they're really sitting there saying, okay, I'm really yearning to feel more nourished. I'm really yearning to feel more creative. And I'm really yearning to feel more aligned in my career. So that's person one. And then typically I coach person two, which is, the real high achiever. So the high achiever, and maybe they're pretty happy in their current career or they're pretty happy with where they are. They want to kind of keep climbing the ladder, but they often feel like nothing is ever good enough, no matter how much they achieve. They really feel like, they struggle with communication, either with direct reports or typically with their boss. They get kind of imposter syndrome, think that nothing's ever good enough. And work sometimes comes at the cost of their health. And they want to keep moving up, but they often know that the way that they're working isn't necessarily sustainable. So they'll come to me and they'll say, I'm like really yearning to keep achieving, but I don't really think that I can do it in this way and I need help. Typically, this group of people as well, they often will have people pleasing issues. They'll often have poor boundaries. They might have issues in their relationships and they really want to appear nice. They really want to appear helpful, but it could be hard for them to, state their needs. So those are the two types of people that I work with, and you might relate to those or you might not relate to those. It's fine either way. But, if you're considering going to a coach versus seeing a therapist, I really look at the two methods kind of differently. So really therapy is about stabilization. Usually therapy is more past focused, bringing you into the present, whereas coaching, you really are starting in the present and you're looking at moving forward. So coaching is really about acceleration. It's more future focused. It's what are we doing right now to get the goals that you want to achieve, to really build the ideal life that you want to achieve. And I would say that therapy, like when you should see a therapist, is when you're experiencing big T trauma or you want to work through big T trauma. So if there's any type of abuse, whether that be physical or sexual, if there's any, mental health disorders, like if there's depression or maybe PTSD, if you're having trouble getting out of bed in the morning, that is definitely more of a therapist focus. So you need to see a professional for that. A therapist can help you move through that, whether that's through, CBT or EMDR or a lot of different techniques that they can pull in. But I would say if you're working with big T trauma and you're kind of constantly feeling like you're battling against it and things have happened in your past that are significant, that is definitely more therapy versus coaching. And I would say, the coach, if you think about coaching, so a coach may often coach people who lived in their past life. So who's kind of have histories similar to them. I mean, not always necessarily, but a coach, for example, for me, I just spoke about those two types of clients, like the eat, pray, love client, who are looking for more soul aligned, soul nourishing careers. That was definitely me. I worked in corporate. I worked at LinkedIn for 7 years. By the end of my tenure, I really knew that that wasn't necessarily the path that was the most fulfilling to me or where I could provide the most impact. So I feel very aligned to that client. I am also, an extremely high achiever. That's something that has been with me all of my life. So I really get that high achiever as well. So coaching will often focus on they'll often focus on different states. So it's almost like, okay, a little bit more identity focused, a little bit more trying to shift the identity, or they'll have a past identity similar to the client. Whereas therapy might focus more on grief, they might focus more on trauma. So they're really more focused on the emotions. They might be specializing in that. That's not to say that a therapist can't necessarily specialize in relationship or divorce. And also, as well, like I've coached CEOs, I've coached chief strategy officers, I'm like editors, like I have not been in those roles. That doesn't mean I can't coach them, but typically a coach will have some sort of similarities with the clients that they're teaching. And so I would say, for transparency, I work with both a coach and a therapist. And I think that really understanding as well, because a lot of my clients have worked with both me and a therapist. What I say whenever a new client's coming on and they want to continue working with therapy is just being very clear about what you're speaking about with the coach and what you're speaking about with the therapist so that everyone's on the same board. So typically, for example, with me, my coach, she is a business owner. I would say she's more of a mindset coach. And I will work with her on strategy for my business. Like we've just kind of redefined my ideal client. I work with her on launching my new group coaching program, the Life and Work Transformation. So we're often doing like strategy, but then it's also, okay, what comes up in the meantime? Is there any imposter syndrome? Is there any shame? Is there something that's coming up that's kind of really blocking my potential? So typically then I notice those, I identify them, and then I usually take the deeper work with my IFS therapist because I kind of want to go into it deeper. I want to understand that part of me, and I'll be talking about IFS in a little bit. But I want to understand that part of me, and I want to like really, really go into that history and unburden that part and shift the part and change the part. And so that I reserve the deeper work for the therapist. I mean, I still get pretty deep with my coach. And I think my clients definitely, because of the methods that I work with, they definitely get very deep with me. But I have a very clear idea of what I go to each person for. So if you're thinking of if you're thinking of working with both a coach and a therapist, it's just getting very clear, what are you seeing each for? And is the coach specialized in that area or is the therapist specialized in that area? because sometimes what tends to happen, and I've seen this not necessarily with my clients, but I've seen this with a few other people, is there are kind of too many cooks in the kitchen, and maybe methods are, maybe the methods are getting tangled up. You might have one mentor saying one thing, another mentor saying another thing, and it could be conflicting views. So also I would say if you're working with both the coach and the therapist, you want them to be on board. So my coach is specialized in shadow work. That's kind of similar to internal family systems therapy, which is what I see the therapist for. So we do have a common shared language. And so you want to definitely know and have visibility on what you're working with each of them for. So I would say, let's say that you want to work with a coach, you've decided, you are very clear on what you want. Now there's the question of, should you do one-on-one coaching versus group coaching? So, one on one coaching is going to be highly specialized. It's tailored to you. One on one coaching can often shift and change directions. Like it's very malleable depending on the skill level of the coach. I mean, for example, with me and my clients, I can coach on really deep inner work. I can look at, potentially things that happened in childhood, how that's impacting them today. We look at that through the lens of IFS therapy. And then it could also be very tactical on, okay, how do we help you negotiate a higher salary? Okay, like you want to interview for a new role? Let's look at that. Let's look at how to navigate the workplace. Let's look at your professional brand. Let's look at setting a boundary. So coaches can kind of go, very, I would say like very high level, very tactical, very like big picture and help you move forward. But then they can also get very deep depending on the training. So one-on-one coaching allows the client a flexibility to work on really whatever they want in their life. And so for me with my clients, if they are the high achiever clients, or if they are, let's say, the Eat, Pray, Love clients wanting to make a transition, we can work on the really deep inner work about, okay, the boundary setting, maybe the toxic relationships, why they are the way they are that way. Let's understand, and then we'll move forward. But we can also say, okay, how do you approach your boss? For this one conversation? Let's prepare for that. Let's prepare for your negotiation. So again, you can shift and change depending on the fluency of the coach. Then I would say in one-to-one or in group coaching. So group coaching, typically there is a curriculum that's set. It's for a specific purpose. So like my group coaching program, the Life and Work Transformation, that is really for people who are maybe stagnant, stuck in their career. They want to feel empowered. They want to feel their energy. They want to feel vitality again. And so that's really for those two people that I spoke about, the clients Eat, Pray, Love, looking to make a transition. And then the clients over here that are really high performers who really want to level up, but they have a lot of things blocking them. So my method is very particular to take someone from stagnant, stuck, or maybe not necessarily, or feeling maybe imposter syndrome, not feeling like they're working at the optimal level, and then I move them through a curriculum. And I would say group coaching is really good if you are looking for a big identity shift and you don't have people in that desired space. So let's say for me, for example, when I started my own business, I come from a corporate background. I didn't know anyone who really had launched, or I knew a few people who had launched a business, but not really in my immediate circle. So I joined a group coaching program with business coaches, just full of only entrepreneurs. I really needed to be surrounded in that world to normalize what was going on for me. So it was so I didn't feel isolated, so I didn't feel alone. And group environment is very good for that, because in one-on-one, you can still kind of feel isolated and you could still feel alone. You're with the coach, but it's only that interaction. Versus group, you're with other people who are also trying to change their identity in the same way that you are. So you're working together. And I know that the group that I'm doing the Life and Work Transformation with my clients, a lot of them are looking at either shifting their careers, or a lot of them are looking at their relationship patterns, how to assert boundaries, how to communicate their needs, how to shape their ideal lives in the way that they want. But they might be in corporate, or they might not know people who are as interested in self-development. They might not know people who really like want to nourish their souls just like they do. So group it's the collective of community. And I really do believe that community carries a huge momentum. So it can be a lot easier to shift and change when you are in group. One-on-one, of course, it's going to be accelerated as well, but the feeling's going to be different. It's you doing your work alone versus sometimes in group, you're going to get drop-ins just from hearing other people's experience. So, if Joe over there is experiencing XYZ, then you're going to be like, oh, yeah, I actually feel like that as well. I'm experiencing that same exact thing. Or maybe I didn't even know that I was experiencing that, but because he said that, then now it's kind of brought into awareness. So there is almost more of a momentum in group. I wouldn't say more of a momentum. It's just a different momentum because you do get the power of community. And I think both have their place. Again, I see a one-on-one coach. I'm also in a business coaching course. I coach one-on-one and I also coach in group. And actually a lot of my one-on-one clients are currently in my group coaching program just for reinforcement of the concepts and the ideas. Because often when you're one-on-one coaching, the coach isn't necessarily teaching. They're coaching you through the concept, but it's not really appropriate for the coach to be like, okay, this is the method that I'm using and here's why. That's the coach's job. That's not the client's job. The client doesn't need to know that. All the client needs to do is get the transformation. That's what they're there for. But in group coaching, a coach might actually go through the methods. The coach plays almost a little bit more of a teacher role depending on the program. So for example, in my program, it's a 10-week program. Each week I'm presenting curriculum to get them from stagnant, stuck to an empowered state. So for example, this past week it was on their ideal life and kind of in self energy, which is a theory in IFS I'm going to talk about shortly. So when do they feel self energy? When do they feel created? When do they feel whole? When do they feel complete? And then we're looking at when do they feel drained? When do they feel like their energy is really low? When has their health been bad? So again, I'm taking them through, like I spoke to them about, okay, this is what we're going to do for your ideal life. They then get homework. I review their homework, but it's a set curriculum. I'm also explaining the methods as I'm going along versus in one-to-one, it's more of, the coach is asking questions or maybe posing from their experience, but the coach is really letting the client do all of the uncovering. It's not necessarily a set method or a set curriculum. And so I would say that, yeah, both definitely have their place. And you can all three of these methods, whether that's coaching, whether that's therapy, whether that's group, all three of them have, extreme benefits and values. And I would say I'm not a therapist, but I am a one-on-one coach and I do facilitate group coaching. And I do see a coach, a therapist, and I'm involved in group. And I think I'm very clear on what I go to each one for. So if you're considering, I obviously invest an insane amount of fucking money in this, but I am a coach. I really believe in all of this. I know that this is the quickest way for me to get to almost self-actualization. That's why I invest so much money in this. But if you are considering going to either a coach or a therapist or investing in a group, being very specific and very clear on what's the outcome that you want, and then understanding which practitioner is going to get you that outcome, either the fastest or, I would say the fastest. And another thing with coaching and with therapy, so the number one thing that is actually the most important and is going to facilitate the most change is the relationship between the practitioner and the client or the patient. So there's a lot of research on this that says that that is the most important thing. So I would say you really want to vibe with the coach. I love my coaches. I think, and my therapist as well, but I think that my coaches, I almost have, I would say, a more intimate relationship. And with my therapist, it's a different nature because we're working in internal family systems therapy. And in IFS, the nature of that is really facilitating the relationship between the client, the self, and all of their parts versus with the client and the therapist. That's not to say that I don't look at my therapist very fondly. I really do. But if you are speaking to a coach initially or you're looking for a therapist initially and you're kind of getting an off vibe or you're thinking like, I don't really know if this person is going to do for me what I need them to do, then I would definitely say don't invest with them because that is actually the relationship between you two is one of the most important things. So now I'm going to talk about internal family systems therapy, or IFS, which is my absolute favorite technique. Like I said, I see an IFS therapist. I also coach with IFS methods in my coaching practice. So I'm in my second training right now. I did an introduction training last year, and now I'm doing like a deeper practicum. And IFS, the entire theory hinges on what's called self energy. So it's a psycho-spiritual method. It's extremely beautiful. And it comes to you with the assumption that you are already whole. So you are already whole. Your client is already whole. And there is part of you, it's your essence, it's your divinity that really is untroubled, that can never be broken, it can never be damaged. And so when you're in that whole state, we call it self energy. And when you're really feeling that self energy, you're feeling playful, you're feeling creative, you're very clear, you're calm. And we all have access to that energy. But what happens is typically, whether it's through big T trauma or little T trauma, all of these parts tend to come up. So a part is kind of a maladaptive way of being. So if you think about, and people really use this in everyday language, if you think of like, oh, well, a part of me really wants this, but a part of me really wants that. So common parts that I work with a lot of clients, super harsh inner critic. They might have a part that tells them they're never good enough no matter what they do. They're lazy, or they could have a part. This week I actually worked with the client's part that was like really intensely procrastinating. This procrastinator part had been with him since he was 17. And then yesterday I worked with the client's part who felt imposter syndrome, this imposter syndrome part. And again, that imposter syndrome part had been with him since he was in his early 20s. And so what happens is typically an incident will happen. Let's say the imposter syndrome part, for example. This could have happened when a client started work and entered the workplace and maybe felt inferior of some sort, maybe felt like they weren't qualified enough to be there. I see imposter syndrome a lot with people who haven't finished higher education. That typically seems to be a big theme. And so what then happens is the part almost gets stuck in time. And the part then thinks that the person is young. Like the part could think that you're actually 7, or the part could think that you're 24. They get stuck at whatever age they came to be. And they typically have really maladaptive behaviors. So, for example, the harsh inner critic maybe will speak to you kind of in a toxic, abusive way, or the procrastinator only wants you to focus on things that you think are that the part thinks are fun and interesting. And so they're kind of forced in this role. And so what we do, instead of like, because often clients will come to me and they'll say, I really hate this part of me and I want it to go away. And I think that I would be a better person without it. If I didn't have this procrastination thing, or if I didn't have this harsh inner critic, or if I didn't think that I wasn't good enough, then I would be amazing. But what we do actually is we don't like push the part away. We don't tell the part to fuck off. What we do is we actually look at the part, we speak to the part, we understand it, and you're almost speaking to it as if it's another person sitting next to you. It can be a very trippy concept for people when they first start doing it. And typically the parts will have, a shape or a feeling, or I have parts that look like, I have one part that looks like a big monster from Monsters Inc. I have another part that looks like the Grim Reaper. I've got another part that's like little cartoons, and another part that's a little Labrador. So they can I have another part that looks like Brene Brown. They can take all different shapes and sizes. And so what you do in the method is you actually speak directly with the part. The client speaks directly with the part. And that's starting to cultivate the relationship between the client and themselves, because what IFS is doing is it's actually just strengthening the relationship between you and all of your parts, so you can bring in that self energy, so you can bring in that creative energy where you feel calm, where you feel at peace, where you feel clarity. And so by speaking to the part, the client will start to understand that part, where the part came from, why they're doing what they're doing, how they're actually starting to help the client. And we go through a process called unburdening. And so once we unburden the part, then the part no longer acts in these maladaptive ways. then the part no longer is telling the client, you're a piece of shit, or you're never working hard enough, or you're lazy, or you need to work out more, or whatever this part does. It can get calmed, it can get soothed. And then by getting soothed, it typically stops acting out. Like the part becomes less activated because you're not understanding it. You're not really trying to push it away. You're trying to come at it with a place of compassion. So I have seen this time and time again, and I absolutely love this method because it's quite quick, the transformation. I've worked with clients who have extremely angry parts, who, erupt, whether that be at their partner, whether that be at their children, who kind of dealt with anger for years and years and years. And once we've understood the part, the anger just dissipates. It just disappears. It's an extreme, and I've had a lot of parts as well where, things that have really plagued me for so long, now that I've understood the part, these symptoms tend to just dissipate quite quickly. So it is almost like a big relief because you have these parts in your system that are extremely activated, and you're going through a theory of like deactivating them so that your whole system then can be more in harmony. And so I would say like really tangible outcomes here is, I mean, I've been doing this work with a therapist for a while, or for about 6 months. So not that long, but I look at what it's done in my business. My first group coaching program, the Life and Work Transformation, was sold out. I had my first sold out launch the first time I ran it. And I do think it's because all of my parts, like I wasn't activated during it. I was so excited for it. I could really be in that self energy. I could really be playful about it. I could be creative about it. I couldn't wait for clients to come on so that they could experience transformation. I've then had clients, leave jobs. I'm having a client, she's actually about to go on her 5-month Eat, Pray, Love. She's quit a toxic job. She's ended a toxic relationship. I have clients who have had really extreme relationships with themselves, like kind of nonstop, almost like not physical harm, but almost like abusive in the way that they speak to themselves, saying that they have to work harder all the time. I've had them develop extreme self compassion. So they now view themselves in a really loving light. Clients that have been extremely angry now have great relationships with their partner. They're going to have another child, whereas previously they were looking at divorce. So there's so many tangible impacts with this types of method. But I would say that kind of the intangibles are really like a stronger, healthier relationship with yourself. And I would say that is the foundation for all of my work. It's getting a client to be in a healthy relationship with themselves, because that's really where freedom comes in. That's where vitality comes in. That's where like abundant energy comes in. When your whole system is in harmony and working together, then everything starts to flow a lot easier. So this is why, IFS is my absolute favorite method to work with. I love it. I highly recommend it. And so that is, yeah, that's the end of it. I hope that you enjoyed it. Please let me know if you have any questions at all. If any of this sparked any interest to you, send me a DM. I will say that I have one-on-one coaching spot available, which is so exciting because I don't usually have spots available in my one-to-one practice. So I have one available, if you're looking for transformation, either if you are kind of that Eat, Pray, Love client that I spoke about, who's looking for a career transformation, wants to do something that's more aligned, more soul nourishing, more creative, or if you're kind of that high achiever that I spoke about, who feels like they suffer with really harsh inner critic, imposter syndrome, but they want to feel their vitality again. You want to feel empowered. You want to feel calm and courageous. Then that's who I specialize with. And then I also have the Life and Work Transformation. It's currently running right now. I am launching that again in July, so you could get on the wait list. But please let me know if you found interest from this. Send me a DM. I love hearing from people, so I don't feel like I'm just fucking speaking into a void. But I would love to hear from you. Let me know if you got any value from this. And yeah, thank you for coming.